Hello and welcome to the Socialist Hype House's YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing a gender wage gap debate. My name is Hungryrye. It's my username on all of my social media platforms, and then I also have sorry.
Slightrightave. My name is first name Avery, and that's just my TikTok.
Okay, do you want me just to call you Avery for the sake of this?
Avery.
Okay, and you can just call me Right. You don't have to call me by my username, just to keep it simple. So we're going to try to keep this about 45 minutes to an hour, and then probably do like a 10 or 15 minute like Q&A from whomever is in like the live audience. But I will get started with my opening statements. So the wage gap, or more recently renamed gender wage inequality, is a misunderstood issue in our society. The underlying theme presented when evaluating the data concerning the disparity between men and women's income is inherently tied to traditional family roles. The breadwinner and homemaker model found in Western society is one of the major contributing factors to this income inequality. In order to close this gap, a complete abolition of this patriarchal system is required. All right. Do you have any contentions, or do you want to? What do you think?
So I think I like to use the word earnings gap because I think it's better represents the disparity we have here. Because for the wage gap, you'd have to go job by job, and it varies some by jobs. Because some jobs women are paid less than men, and other jobs it's reversed. But I think that it exists. There is a disparity, but I don't think it exists because of like a sexist system or patriarchal system. And I froze.
Yeah, and I think that's where it generally comes from, is like assessing the difference between like a controlled environment versus the uncontrolled. And that's generally where like the 80% disparity, which is what they generally point to, or 81 cents to every $1 that a man earns. However, I think it's important to know that when we do an like evaluation, like BLS did in 2019 of 125 jobs, and they assessed the earnings between men and women, all but 12 men earned more money. It was quite a comprehensive study, and I thought that was quite interesting. So it's definitely a lot deeper than I think surface level. However, with everything, even like the Equal Pay Act, there's still a lot of loopholes within that system. I believe it's like the fourth section. It's like, let me see. There's the fourth defense, right, in the Equal Pay Act has this quotation, right? Factors other than sex. And there has been quite a few court cases where there have been issues where men and women have been earning different incomes, but they get to bypass it via that loophole within that act, even though it was intended to make sure that everyone got paid the exact same. So, like, although I recognize this isn't going to be like the major contributing factor to the pay gap, it still happens though in a very explicit manner.
Mm-hmm. I think the wage gap, I think it comes from, it could be left over from when you had the traditional roles where wife stays at home, cooks, cleans, takes care of kids, husband goes to work. But also now I think that might be a leftover, but right now it just comes down to different patterns in like the work environment. My screen is like frozen.
Is it? I was like, you look good on my end. Let me look at the comments. But I think you're okay. As long as I can hear you. I think that's all that matters.
I might just have crap internet or have too much stuff on the internet. But
okay.
I think
it's an occupational thing, or I'm just trying to gauge where you're coming at it from.
I think it's not. I think it's like patterns on jobs, like the jobs that women tend to take, the jobs men tend to take, the hours they tend to work, the likelihood to ask for a raise, work overtime. Women, when they get pregnant, most take maternity leave off. Most men don't take paternity leave. Some do, but most don't usually.
Mm-hmm.
So that could lead to working less. And on average, men, well, in 2017, they found that on average, men work more hours than women. Not a whole lot more hours, but just about a fraction of an hour left more.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, women are more likely to have sorry
No,
have
you're good.
children and take leave off for those children than men are, because men don't get pregnant.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to like motherhood and like fatherhood, I think it's important to note that I think on average, the median length that men take is about 1 week, and about 72% take about 2 weeks, whereas women are obviously going to have to take more time off because it's more physically demanding. However, even with that, like having children is a very important part of our society. Like women are generating the future labor force and are being financially penalized for that. So we have to kind of look at it as like, should women be financially stunted because they are having children? Men are also having children, right? They're just not the ones like procreating them, but they're not
Off.
penalized in the same ways.
I guess you could look at it that way. You could also look at it from the company's standpoint that's hiring someone. Um, when someone is not working, it's a liability for the company. This is just from the company standpoint. It's a liability for the company to use funds while they're not getting the work out of the worker. That's I don't, that's that's how I see it. Sorry, I'm trying to get my word.
No, that's okay. Feel free to collect yourself. So what you're saying is because women are taking maternity leave, are you saying they shouldn't be compensated for that leave?
I think they should.
They should be
I think they
compensated.
should be compensated for the leave because I'm raised by a single mother. I'm a minor, and my mom is raising me basically by herself. So having that leave, having that time to take when I was younger and still
Mm-hmm.
be get money while she's on herself by herself, because my dad's out of the picture, by herself, it could be beneficial, and it'd be beneficial to a lot of women. I think that yes, there should be paid maternity leave.
Yeah, and like I think absolutely like across the board paid maternity leave, but there's in like places like Iceland where in like the year 2000 they implemented take it or leave it maternity paternity laws where it was a 9 months of leave, and it was mandatory that both partners took a minimum of 3 months off. So they both were splitting that time evenly, and then they had an additional 3 months that they could divvy up between the parties as they wanted. And it ended up alleviating that gender income gap or earnings gap almost completely.
You think we should
Quite
implement
rapidly.
that in America?
Yeah, I mean, why not? It feels very unfortunate that we have to force the hand of people to undo like these traditional family roles, right? But if that's what it takes, to like get people out of that income gap, then why not? I mean, like when you look at the division of labor outside of work, right? 54% of moms do more of like the managing of schedules, 50 or 47% do the taking care of sick kids, and 31% are doing the household chores. That's all labor still, and men are not doing that. It's kind of crazy to think about that, like even in 2020, women are still doing more of the household work than men are.
Yeah, it. I think it comes down to what some women want to do. I mean, it might be easier to. This might make me sound really bad, but it might be easier to stay home and stay with the kids. It might be easier to stay home, take care of the home. It might be easier to that. That might be why some women are choosing to do it. I don't think anyone's forcing them to do that. Maybe in like I guess more conservative houses, that's what they have. But I don't think anyone's really forcing them to stay home. It's more of a choice. Like how a lot of women tend to be teachers, and there's not a lot of women doing like construction, which does pay pretty decently. Construction, fishermen, they pay pretty decently. Coal miners, they pay more than teachers at least. And a lot of women, some places women dominate the teachers. Some women dominate as nurses. They dominate in some of those fields where it's easier to stay at home and be near the kids in case they want to have kids in the future, but it pays less in turn. That might be.
Yeah, I mean, usually what it comes down to is scheduling conflicts, right? The higher paying jobs have stricter schedules versus the more flexible jobs, which, I mean, women are generally overrepresented in like nursing and teaching and being a waitress, you know. But I mean, the goal should be to alleviate these gendered jobs, right? And no one's saying that like the jobs like being an
Like
oil
gender
rig or,
roles?
yeah, I mean, traditional family roles, right? Where the mom is staying home and like the father is out working,
Yeah.
you know, because that's like what's contributing to this income disparity is these roles that have been implemented and like stuck in society. I mean, even when we look to like 1989, only 4% of there were stay-at-home dads versus in 2016 that number only went up to 7% of like the parents like were stay-at-home dads, where when we look at like to stay-at-home moms, right, in 1989 that percentage was about 28%, and then in 2016 it only went down 1% to 2017 or 27%. So these roles are still so prevalent and they're
And you're
not
against those
changing.
roles. You're not for those roles.
No, I think parents should be seen as both the breadwinner and the homemaker, because now most parents are both working. And so why should, if both parties are working, women should be still underpaid? Like they're not being compensated for that labor, right?
Well, yeah, but that's looking as a whole. Women are being underpaid. You'd have to go to some jobs to see which is if it's actually going on. I think I forget which company did it. I believe it was Google. They went and did a study and they looked through all the people they were paying. They found that women were being paid more than the men. It was some big tech company. I'm not, don't quote me. I think it's Google, but it was a tech company that did it, that found that they're paying women more than men. And in some fields, women are being paid more than men.
Oh yeah, and I'm totally not denying that by any means. And again, like they did, like the Bureau of Labor Statistics went through 125 jobs, and out of all of them, all but 12 men were paid substantially more.
And it took into account the degrees and did everyone have the same degree and the same work experience? Because then that's when you get
Yes.
those variables come in. So everyone had the same degrees and work experience, and it was still
Yes.
disparity. Same
Yeah.
hours worked, all that.
I believe that they took into account for anything, and I will happily send you this after the debate if you would like to read through it.
Yeah, I would.
I will do that. But even that, I mean, so you acknowledge, right, that like women are doing these things, right? They're electing. Like half of the population is just electing to take lower paying jobs. And
So
you don't,
smart.
do you see
I,
that as
I,
a
I
problem?
believe that's. I believe that is that. Wait, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
Do you see that as a problem though?
Do I see it as a problem? It's a personal choice of what you want to do as your career. And if you want to take a job that might be easier, maybe you can stay closer to home. Maybe you can, and it provides more flexibility. My mom works her job. I'm sorry, I'm referencing my mom a lot, but this is just
No.
my experience. Um, my mom works her same job because it gives her flexibility for me, so that she can do more things for me. So if you want to work a job that is going to pay less, but in turn you get flexibility, um, for the home, flexibility for your family, that maybe you're not married, flexibility for that, and you want to be paid less, I think that's a choice that you can make, and it is no one's fault but yourself when you make that choice.
So even though your mom is pulling the weight, right? She's
Yeah.
doing all of this and she's alone, you still think that she should be paid less?
No, I think she should be paid for how hard she works. She works very, very hard. She's underpaid right now. The job isn't paying her enough. Given she works with adults with disabilities and abusive situations. So she goes in and she investigates these abusive situations, and she writes up cases. Some of them 50 pages, and they give her 30 cases at a time. So no, I don't think she should be paid less than her male colleagues. However, my mom did take a lot of time off for my mental health, and I really thank her for that. I needed it. She took time off for my mental health, so she took a lot of time off for me in turn.
Yeah, and like that should have been like paid for, right? Or are you not saying that she should have
I'm not
gotten?
sure if it was paid for. I'd have to ask her.
Well, hypothetically, right? She wasn't paid for it, right? It's necessary. Like you're, I'm assuming, still in like high school or like
Yeah, I'm in high school.
getting close. Um, but she had to take that time off, and like eventually you're going to go into the workforce, right? And all
Yes.
these other parents that take off time are going to, like, we're raising children that are going to go into the labor force, but men aren't having to take the same time off because of their jobs, right? So why are they still being underpaid?
Because the men, like you said, the men are not taking the time off. They're
Right,
not
we should
taking
be
the time off.
actively working towards completely undoing these like traditional family roles. It's going to keep coming back to that, unfortunately.
If me myself, if you would like to take down the traditional family rules, I think it's up to what people would like. If people would like to have the traditional family where the breadwinner goes to work and they go at home, that's them. But if you would like to take down these traditional family roles and you believe it's beneficial, then that's your belief. I might think differently. I don't really have a strong opinion about taking down the family roles. I think they'll change over time as needed. They're changing very slowly, but slow change is better than no change to me. But that those roles, I don't think they need to be dismantled. I think we should let it go. We should let it change as it progresses naturally over time.
Even though half of the population is being affected financially, right?
They're being affected financially. Yeah, half the population. So yes, I think they should be changed over time. How would we proactively change those roles? What would we do? What would we change as a society? Would we change? Well, you can't really change the law, can you? But what do you think we should make changes as a society
But I
to?
mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could go through it, right? Some jobs, right, where women are being paid less is because of a thing called salary matching, because women are coming from jobs where they're not earning as much, moving into higher paying jobs, right? And those employers are paying them like, oh, well, I'll just match that salary, where their male counterparts are already starting off higher and they're going into that new job starting off. And there's just this constant inequality where they can't match up. So getting rid of salary matching would be a good start. Getting rid of salaries that are based on uniqueness, which is another thing where they just like, oh, well, this person does X, Y, and Z more, where they can't necessarily prove that they're doing more, but they can call it that. Like we've seen.
They can prove they can do more by their hours, how fast they're, whatever the job may be. Let's say it's a job where you turn in cases or reports. You could prove that they're working more.
Yeah, I mean, like to an extent, right? We can prove that, but we can look at some of the court cases that have like happened with all of this, right? And there was one where the plaintiff had been working for the company forever, right? And she realized that she was being paid less than her male counterparts. And they were being paid more because they had like college experience and whatnot. However, college experience wasn't required for the job in the first place, yet they were being paid more for it. So it's just like instances like that. It's like they can just pick and choose what they want. I believe there was another one where let me look.
Do you think that it should be the jobs place to not have those things? Someone who might have a college degree versus someone who doesn't. You do not believe that the person with the college degree should be paid more?
No, I think if you go into a job, right, and the requirement is a bachelor's degree, those people should be paid the same, right? If you went into that job and like, I don't know, you didn't have that bachelor's degree and you were going to school to get it, it would make sense why weren't getting paid more. However, if you went to work at like, I don't know, McDonald's and you had like a bachelor's in history, should that person get paid more even though they're doing the exact same job because they have a bachelor's degree? I don't think that's fair.
Well,
if it doesn't pertain to the job, right?
Well, if it doesn't pertain to the job, yes. But if it does pertain to the job, let's say there wasn't a need for this degree. There's a degree. Let's say you were a degree in engineering or math or something, and it helped you do the job better, or it helped you do the job more efficient, or it made you more qualified, it gave you more knowledge, whatever it did to help you in this job, you think that they should still be paid the same, even though they have that extra boost and they would overachieve.
If they overachieved, right, and that degree was required, right, and I'm not talking about their extracurriculars, they should still like be paid the same amount as someone with like a mutual. It's like the difference between someone having a degree from like a private or public university and like Harvard, and they go to the same job. They should still be paid the same, even though someone has higher credentials.
So you mean like someone who went to like a prestige, let's say someone who went to Yale versus someone who went to Montgomery Community College, but it's the same degree?
It's the same degree, is it not?
Oh, so you're saying that even if it's the same degree, depending on the university that you go through.
Yeah, but someone could see that and like see like, oh, well, this one's more prestigious, so they deserve more money. But it's the same educational level at the end of the day.
It's the same educational level on paper, but the quality of education could be different. With more funds and let's say more professors with more experience, the quality of education could be better at these different universities.
It could, but at the end of the day, it's still a bachelor's degree in science with like a major in business.
Yes, but you can also have, let's say someone has I'm gonna put it in since I'm still in high school. Someone has the same grades, but someone gets an A, right? Someone gets an A in college prep classes or just standard classes, and someone gets an A in honors or AP classes. Do you think that they are on the same level? I don't think they're on the same level. I've been in both honors and regular classes. I do not think they're on the same level.
Well, because they study extensively different. If it was an honors degree, that's a different degree. But I'm talking about a flat bachelor's degree across is the same. They're supposed to be identical.
You're right. They're supposed to be identical, but they're not always identical because the different colleges have different quality of education. All colleges' quality of education isn't the same. So a degree from one college might be more valuable than a degree from the other college because they have more funds, better at quality of education, and you can see I think in
like a hiring position, right? You see someone with a Harvard degree, they're more likely going to get hired, right? But if that degree is not required for that job, they should not be getting paid more.
If the degree is not required for the job, they should not be paid for it. But it's still a bonus that they have an edge on their coworkers.
Right, they have that edge, but it's not required for that job.
It has, so it should be. So you think they should only get more money if it's required? They have a degree that's required for the job.
Yeah, so if they're going into that job and everyone otherwise no one would know, right? And they're not telling anyone. This is like another big thing is like not being able to talk about your salary is what contributes to income inequality. Which is why I believe it's in the Paycheck Fairness Act.
I thought that law doesn't exist anymore, or am I mistaken? Where you can't talk about. There was I might be tripping. I really might be tripping.
I think it's highly discouraged. I think that they could fire you on the premise of whatever, but it's still like talking about your salary in your workplace is very like discriminated against. You're not supposed to do it. But there's a lot of different ways that you can go about, like when we go just looking at like the fiscal bits of it. And like, I believe it was 2017, they tried to pass this Paycheck Fairness Act, and it's still in the process of being passed, and it's working to close that exact issue, was like the factors other than sex issue in the Equal Pay Act. So I know another thing that they can do is they can put data into a system. Let me see if I can remember what it is called. It's just like data collection, and they can assess the jobs for the employees and see how much they're getting paid, and they can see if like primarily their female database at like the place of employment, they're getting paid less. So there's all of these changes obviously that we can work towards. But yeah. It's still, at the end of the day, like it still exists right now, right? Yes. It's just a matter of like dealing with it. I mean, there's other issues. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
I was saying, so when you look at the disparities, right, and you have to look at them, are the disparities there because of factors other than sex? That's what the whole. That's what I think the whole gender wage gap is about. Is it because of gender or sex or whichever you'd like to use? Is it because of gender or sex, or is it because of other factors that gender and sex happen to take a part in?
No, I think that there are like explicit like instances where women are paid less. However, I think the major contributing factor is just this implicit bias towards women, thinking that they are going to be less dependable because they're going to be taking care of children. All of like those things that are associated with like the homemaker idea.
Say, I was about to say.
I mean, they found like that's why there's the difference between like the motherhood penalty and like the fatherhood bonus. Usually, on average, like the motherhood penalty is about 10% per child with for women with high skills and high wages. So these are the women that are in like the jobs with very strict schedules, not just the flexible ones. When we're comparing like the John CEOs to just any other female partner, they're being paid less because of having children, because they have to attend to those duties in the household that are not being equally distributed between them and their partner.
So I ask, what do you think about people hiring people to fill a diversity quota, which does happen sometimes. It does happen that where they fill a diversity quota or they hire. Oh, look, we hired this amount of women. We're not a sexist company. Look, we hired this amount of women, or we hired these amount of Black people or Latino people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing with like quotas is they can come off looking like they are picking someone who is like a person of color with like a GED over someone who has a bachelor's degree, and because they're white, they don't get it. It's a lot different. This means that they're trying to sift through more applications that are going to fit that part, and it helps to bring people up and encourage like diversity in the workplace. And historically, other countries have been doing this. I believe more of like the state socialist companies or countries were implementing quotas where they would hire more women in the workforce, and it worked out great for them. Like it helped a lot because in government positions there is a lot less of an income disparity, and they generally have more flexible of schedules.
So you agree with hiring people for diversity? Do you think that it should just be based purely off credentials and people shouldn't look through the and hire for diversity rather? Sorry.
No, and like I don't think anyone should just be like, oh well, that they're a woman, they should get it over someone who has like a bachelor's and like 2 years of experience. However, I think the way that quotas are often presented, it can be misleading, and it's definitely worth like researching and understanding a little bit more. But generally, it just means that they're going to look for more female candidates that have the credentials versus just the top couple people on the thing or on the list that are gonna meet it first, so that they can fill the spot. They have to spend more time looking for that specific aspect, if that makes sense.
So if people are paying women less and they're getting away with it, so why are they not hiring more women? Why are they hiring men?
I mean, that's the thing. When it comes to the strict jobs, they know that fathers are less likely to take time off to take care of sick kids. They're going to be able to travel more because generally they're going to have a partner take care of the children at home. So that's generally why, is they just view women as less reliable, independent, because they are carrying the weight of bearing children.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a problem.
A young woman who's very young, who hasn't had kids yet, and it's not unlikely that she will not have kids. That is now a cost to the company, and they take that into account. Do I think they're wrong for taking it into account? Not necessarily.
But that is, they're discriminating against women because they view them as less responsible. However, if the companies were to view fathers in the same way, that they were also going to contribute in childbearing and taking care of those children, it would be better. Like they would be less like strict with that. Well, just having children is an inevitable part of most people's lives. So why put the pressure on women?
Because when we look at the data shown, and we see that women are more likely to take off for the kids, and that's why they take that into account. They're more likely to take off for the kids than the fathers. So if they know this, why aren't they? I just want to know, why aren't they hiring more men and just men? Because it'd make more sense to hire men. Why would you even hire like a young woman if you know that there's a good chance of her having kids in the future?
They generally do. This is why there are so many male CEOs in business positions, and women are generally overrepresented in like middle skilled jobs.
There's so many men as CEOs and high positions because men are more likely to ask for raises and work overtime. They are more
because
likely.
men know that they do not have to carry the weight of childbearing. And that is problematic. That is where like the sexism comes in.
Men knowing that they do not have to bear children is the sexism.
Based on society, like societal influences, they know that they're not going to be held to that standard of taking care of children in the same ways that women are.
Yeah. So so what are you saying with that?
That's a problem.
Why?
What do you mean why? This is why the gap
why is it a problem that men are not held to the same standards of childbearing as women? I'm not saying if I agree or disagree. I'm just asking why.
Okay, so men are going to be fathers, right? Do you think a father should be as equally present in a life of a child as a mother is?
100%.
Right? But yet they're not, right? They're working too much. They're doing like more of the laboring. And this is an issue for men too. This isn't just an issue for women, right? Men are being forced into these stereotypes where they're going to have to work more because women are also pushed into like their homemaker status. So by doing these and implementing like mandatory take it or leave it laws, it will help men out too, because they won't have to work as much, right? If you have more income coming into your house, why would men need to work as many hours?
So the people are, when you have the income coming in your house, you're a married couple or your girlfriend and boyfriend, right?
Sure.
Maybe. So what about the single men and the single women who are young? We're talking about the young men and the young women.
The young men. I mean, do you think a young woman should be discriminated against because she has the potential of bearing a children, even though the man can equally impregnate a woman? Like it's both. It takes two.
It does. I know it takes two, and but our men are less likely to take off. That's why that discrimination, I guess, comes in, because they're less likely to take off. Even if they do have kids, they're less likely to take off. And that's what comes in with like the classic breadwinner house. What are we calling
homemakers? It? Breadwinner homemaker model, right?
Yeah, bread with what you said.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes in again.
Yes, exactly. I think we are on the same page. Do you have any other questions? I was like, I think there's just like a little bit that we're not quite meeting on.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I don't think it's because of sexism or it's sexist. That's where the point of contention comes in. I just don't think that it's sexist or sexism that women are making less, when you take into all the accounts of less likely to work the dangerous, higher paying jobs, less likely to work overtime, more likely to take off leave for kids. And it's not women's fault that they have to take off leave for kids. And less likely, did I say less likely to ask for a raise?
Sure. I don't know. But I think you've answered this, though. Like, they realize that women already know, right, that they're going to be affected by these things. So they have to go into jobs knowing this. I mean, there's a lot of other like influential issues, like not being able to have accessibility to birth control, not being able to get sterilized if they want to, how expensive daycare is. Like, you got to think about stuff like this, and generally, like, families are going to have to bear that cost. There's a lot of factors, right, that are contributing to this, but women will generally know this. and that is why they take the more flexible jobs that are not paying out as much, like cosmetology, which generally it can pay out a decent amount, but they have, it's just one of those things. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah, so
if you know you're born into a society that does not have the safety nets in place to bring you up, you have to play the system to the best of your ability. I mean, this could get into like any kind of argument at this point. Like we can do a comparison if you want. Like we could go and look at like state socialist countries in like the 1940s or so. Like in the USSR and East Germany, they had mandated labor because they didn't have enough people after the war. So men and women both went to work, right? But they also implemented like daycares, and they had laundries and all this stuff. They had all of the things needed. So the things that women were traditionally doing at home, they had all those safety nets. They had healthcare. They had all of these things. So they were able to work, and it worked. It worked quite well for a very long time, and it wasn't until like the fall of the Berlin Wall did it go back to this breadwinner.
People were miserable in those state socialists. They were miserable.
That's completely subjective. Like I didn't want to have to like take it here, but like when it came down to it, and they did like look at the schedules, they worked like 8 to 10 hours a day. The father would go pick up the kid at the state-funded daycare, so they didn't have to pay for, right? And then he would go home and make dinner and stuff. And they worked like 5 or 6 days a week. It's like, how much different is that from our Western culture right now? People working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. It's quite similar to what we are seeing today. I mean, we can get like it's a whole different issue. It's just an example of like a way that some places have handled it in the past.
I mean, you say it's subjective, but how many people who in the USSR who didn't live in Russia, how many people were happy living in the USSR?
I do not have a number. However, I do know about like 60% of women enjoyed their time under like the USSR. It's somewhere around there. I would have to pull it up exactly, as I didn't think I was going to have to prepare that for this debate. I was just throwing out an example of like countries like that. But meanwhile, like if you look at like employment rates, it was much more progressive, right? That was what the goal in those countries, right, was to make men and women equal. So they implemented all of those changes. Whereas in our culture, I mean, you look back to the 1940s, 1950s United States, and women were still at home taking care of children. Meanwhile, in like the USSR and East Germany, they were at work. But they did that, and it helped alleviate that gap. And it's something worth considering, right? Is when we look at what they did, implementing like these really nice like crutches and daycares and kindergartens for children, because daycare is expensive. That was something that women didn't have to worry about. They had healthcare. That's another thing. That's either women have to work full time and pay a ton of money out of pocket so that they can have healthcare, because healthcare is incredibly important. We do not have like a Medicare for all system in the United States.
Is that I'm assuming that's something you want in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Disagree. But can I?
Wait, you disagree with Medicare for all?
I disagree with a universal healthcare system. I do, but do you want to talk more about that, or do you want to stay towards the wage gap?
It would effectively help women more. I mean, think about how much it costs to bear a child, right? That cost is put on women.
Yeah.
Unless you are married, and then you can split the cost. But generally, it's a lot. Like if you have a C-section, it's about $30-something thousand, and then you have to go to all your prenatal checkups. And if you don't have good enough insurance, you're having to front those costs.
Yeah, but then you get into which happens now. I'd say a country close to us is the UK, where rationing supplies come in.
Are we not rationing supplies in the United States?
Not as strictly as we would if we had to worry about everyone. Because in the UK right now, people are like going blind from just routine cataract surgery because they have to ration surgeries. America doesn't have that problem.
No, I'm not suggesting like the NHS. I think that they have their problems, and I don't think it's an ideal system by any means. However, like there has been a lot of studies that going towards it, just showing that having. I mean, I'm assuming you'd rather just privatize everything.
Would I privatize everything?
Like
No.
health insurance wise.
Health insurance wise, I think it could be more beneficial
To privatize it, right? Where I would argue it's the opposite. By having a single payer, it would work out better. This is all subjective. It's not necessarily completely contingent on the topic at hand. However, it's just something to keep in mind that women are having to pay for producing children, right?
So, can I just address something in the chat really quick?
Sure, I have not checked. I have not checked the chat.
Yeah, it's going off. So they said, dude, it's literally all sexism. They just expect women to get pregnant and stay home, and the hardworking jobs are pretty much closed for women. I disagree with that statement. No one's stopping women from being a lumberjack. Most women don't want to. I don't want to.
That's the thing. We're talking about traditional family roles and not being able to have that flexible schedule, right? Because you're the primary like homemaker. You're not able to do those jobs. How are you supposed to do the job like that? What happens if your kid is sick and you're a woman and like the father
they don't want also to do the jobs when they can do the jobs. Most single women don't want to be a lumberjack. Most single women don't want to mine coal.
I mean, those are like some like the really like your audio went out a little bit.
Huh? Oh yeah.
Oh, no, you're better.
Can I step away for just 1 minute?
Sure.
All right.
Hello. I'm assuming most of the people in here are my Discord peeps. What's up? They could drink my bubbly. I'll probably summarize some stuff up. Because I believe I've said, well, I'll go back through and see if I have any other statistics that I was going to look at, but
I apologize.
No, you're fine. I'm just going back through my document and looking to see if I had any other stats or anything I wanted to look at. But since we're on the topic of mothers, we could talk about maternity leave, right? I thought it was quite interesting, right? The United States is one of a handful of countries that does not offer maternity leave. The other countries are Lesotho, Liberia, Papua New Guinea, and Swaziland. And so we're like the only real like first world country on that list.
You're a little quiet. Here, let me put. Actually, no, that one.
Can you hear me?
Very quiet. You're very quiet.
I'm muffled.
I'm explaining the sexism. I'm trying to explain what is sexist by saying just because it has men and women at a disparity or they have a difference. For example, I don't think it's sexist that women don't want to take the more dangerous. Like you see from the workplace fatalities, women aren't taking those dangerous jobs. And I'm saying it's not sexist that they're doing that because most women don't want to. Most women also aren't less likely to ask for a raise. I really cannot hear you.
I'm not talking right this second.
Here. Most women are not asking for a raise. Most women are not working overtime because of the children. And is it women having children? Is that the sexism?
I say, is women having children?
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you great.
All right.
You say, is women having children?
No, women being more likely to have children and employers not wanting to take the risk on their like status quo by hiring young women who are more likely to have children from their viewpoint is that's sexist when they're when they're working. Why? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding why it's sexist to take
because
into
they're
account
discriminating against women. because they couldn't have the opportunity of getting pregnant, right? But men could equally become fathers, right?
But
And
then
they are
then it,
not discriminated against.
yes, because men are less likely to take paternity leave, like we've addressed. They're less likely to take off.
That's not the problem.
That's not the problem, or it is the problem.
No,
Sorry.
it is. It's a very big problem.
You think more men should take paternity leave off?
Absolutely.
So until then, you can't do anything about it unless you can get the men to take paternity leave.
Correct.
So how do you get men to take paternity leave off?
It has to be forced.
You force them to take paternity leave.
Correct, like Iceland.
Okay.
So, like, what Iceland does, right? Like, I explained this a little bit earlier. They have this, like, package of money they get, right? Like a maternity leave, like how we have FMLA in the United States. However, they don't get it unless both parties take the 3 months off at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah, so they take 3 months off, and then there's an extra 3 months that they can divvy up, but they won't get it unless they both take the time off from work.
I don't think maternity leave is bad. I think maternity leave is very good. I think taking time off to take care of your children and give them your unadulterated attention is good. Sorry, that was just a comment that I had to address. I don't think maternity leave is bad.
No, and I think maternity leave is great. However, I don't think it should just be limited at like implementing maternity laws, as paternity laws need to be implemented too. I think it's just the overall encouraging of men to be fathers, which is an issue, right? We see a lot more single moms than we do single dads in the United States, and that isn't a good thing. It's just overall, I think the stigma on like how fathers should act needs to be changed significantly.
Like absentee fathers aren't treated well by society. Well, I don't know if that's what you're saying or not, but the way fathers who are absent, who leave their kids, they're not regarded well. They're not treated well.
No, I'm not saying that they're regarded well. However, I think we have this like preconceived notion about how fathers should behave and how mothers should behave, and this is like just it kind of comes back to like some sort of like religious, like a lot of people grew up with like some sort of Judeo-Christian influence in their lives of like the father being the bread maker and not generally being as attentive, whereas mothers were more down to nature and more emotional and more involved with their children. However, who's to say that fathers can't do that? Like it's all they can.
But some fathers don't want to. Some fathers don't want to be present in their kids' lives. Some people have kids that aren't together. Like we come into where people have accidental pregnancies, and people aren't together. So how would the maternity leave come in when with like the single motherhood rate now, especially in like the Black community, something like 70% is really high. Yeah. But so how would those paternity and maternity leave laws come in place if the parents are not together? They just won't get it at all.
No. You're talking about like the Icelandic ones. Like I think absolutely like if you're a single mother and like both of the parties are not together, it would just go to like the mother taking the time off. However, like she would get paid for the entire 9 months instead of just the 3, because that's what it is. It's 9 months of leave that is paid for.
Mm-hmm. I want to say for the record, because I feel like there's this misconception that I'm against paternity and maternity leave.
I think maybe it's just the way that the argument is being presented is it can come off like that. I can see it a little bit. However, I don't think that's your intention.
I understand how I sound, but it's not what I mean, and I'm trying to articulate myself, but then my tongue gets tied and all that. Yeah, I don't think maternity and paternity leave bad. If more men took paternity leave and more men were active in their child's life, that'd be absolutely wonderful. It's shown to be beneficial for the child.
Right, and that should be the goal. That's what we should be aiming to achieve, is to have fathers as involved in their children's life, and that companies should not just discriminate against women and view fathers in the same way that they do mothers, so that it's okay for like a father to like take more time off to take care of their kids and raise children. At the end of the day, like a job's a job, but like you're raising people, and it's awesome, it's incredible, and we should really like push for that. Create better people.
If we push for that and men decide not to, let's say that they decide not to to be more active, or they do decide not to take paternity leave to take care of the child, and they want to work. And they want to work more, and they want their wives or their girlfriends or whoever's at home, they want them to work less, but still work, and take care of the children at the same time. And you're against that if they decide to do that.
I think if it's between two consenting parties, right, and they agree that like, oh, maybe like one party wants to stay home. I think this goes either way, whether it wants to be a stay-at-home father and they're like, you know what, I really want to do this. This is a job I want to do because I recognize being a stay-at-home parent as a job. It's labor. So like, I don't have a problem with that. It's not my business. However, I think that the women that are going to work should not be penalized because they are working parents, right? And having to take these flexible shifts. I think that more of the higher paying jobs should start to offer more flexible shifts to start to rectify this.
So it comes down to a lot of what should happen to what now it comes down to what is happening. What is happening is men are not taking maternity leave. What is happening is men are not taking maternity leave. And women are taking maternity leave. What is happening with the job is that men are more likely to ask for raises. So we should encourage women to ask for raises, and then it starts to level out.
Right? Yeah, but there's issues like there's other several factors at like the higher level jobs where women are experiencing like I think it's about 2 in 5 women experiences sexual like harassment or some sort of like sexual innuendos at work. So like it's just sexism in the workplace, right? All of these things need to be addressed, but
of course,
yeah, I heavily support implementing programs to help encourage women to like get those raises, but the companies can't discriminate against mothers because they have children. I mean, most people are going to have kids.
Yeah, most people are going to have kids. So companies are taking that into account on how it affects their profit.
But they should not be. They should be treating fathers the exact same way. I mean, that's like the thing with the wage gap, right? Is it's generally seen in the early 20 to 30s when they're in childbearing years, whereas when women get older and they get to like their like 40s menopause. And 50s, right? The children have grown up and moved out. The wage gap actually starts to like get much closer. It's a lot less than what it was. So it's apparent that like they kind of hold off on giving women these promotions.
Women don't ask for the promotions, and the women don't ask for the promotions.
Do you have a source that says that they're not asking for promotions?
I do not have a source on me that does not have them promotions.
I was like, that sounds like a big
let's
claim.
For the sake of argument right now, let's assume that I'm telling the truth. And to my knowledge, I think that is correct. To my knowledge, I could be wrong. And I will go back and check myself. Actually, I could check myself right now. I have my computer open. But
we can always do it afterwards. I'm not that worried about it. I was just like, that claim is a little specific, right? To not less likely to ask for it. But I'm not saying that it's not impossible.
Yeah, so let's assume what I'm saying is true. All right, just for right now. If what I'm saying is false, I'll apologize for what I said.
No, you're good.
But let's assume what I'm saying is true. So if women are less likely to ask for promotions, how are they supposed to get the promotions if they don't ask for it?
Right. I mean, like, and if what you are saying is like entirely true, like less women are doing that, and there is like empirical data to support it, then like that's like what we can do, right, is come up with programs to encourage women or teach women how to properly ask for promotions. But from what I've read, like in most of like the studies, right, that are like disproving this gender wage gap, it usually comes down to like occupations, positions, education, job tenure, and hours worked, right?
There's a lot of studies disproving the wage gap.
But most of them acknowledge, right, because they're doing it under the guise of a controlled setting.
Oh, wage gap. I'm not arguing that the wage gap doesn't exist. I'm arguing that it doesn't exist because of sexism. That's why I think it doesn't.
Well, I think that's where we're on two different. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
That's the point of contention. Some people argue that there is no wage gap at all.
I mean, that would be, in my opinion, it would be silly because it's very apparent in uncontrolled setting, and you can see it on like a plethora of studies that it is there. It's just a matter of whether it is sexist or not. And that is why we're here. However, I mean, we're almost at the hour mark. I think we've gone over virtually all studies, and we can work on that other, if you find it later, you can send it. I'm not like You need it now. I don't care. So what we could do is go and look at the comments and see if anyone has any questions. Feel free, I think. If you have any closing statements, I mean, I feel like we've kind of come to a really good spot. We're kind of on like the same page. It's just the exact point of contention has been identified.
I think
And I
what we
don't think you'll be
disagree
able
on
to.
isn't huge. I think it's like a smaller
Yeah,
detail.
and I had gone into it thinking it was going to be a lot different.
You thought you'd gone into it being a lot different?
I've talked to a lot of people that said it's just flat out doesn't exist because the equal pay gap exists, or Equal Pay Act exists. Bada bing, bada boom. There's nothing.
Just because the law is there doesn't mean that it's being.
Yeah, so I went into it worst case scenario. You never know. I have interacted with some very interesting characters on TikTok.
If you see my page, I do come off very, when I speak, very far right wing. So, for some of it, I'm more of in the middle. For a lot of different things, and I think being on TikTok is making me become more left leaning as I'm
That's really
exposed to different
interesting.
ideas.
I've
noticed it.
That. Stalin is in fact daddy, young Stalin specifically. I don't know how you feel about Stalin.
How I feel about Stalin, I'm not a big in politics. I'm not a big economics person. I don't know a whole lot of economics. I know a lot about guns.
There's a lot to explore when it comes to economics. I know, like on the right, a lot of people go to like Smith and like Milton Friedman, and they read a lot of their stuff. And then, like obviously, like on our side, we read a lot of Marx and Engels and stuff.
I need to read on the more economic side. I try not to. I stay away from saying things like, I know a lot of people on the right say, "Oh, socialism is evil and terrible, and communism is evil and terrible." All that. I try not to comment on it because I don't know. And I'm gonna make it.
You know what? That is a really great attitude to keep about it. I think it's worth reading like the manifesto and like, I mean, you could try reading State and Revolution. Some people really like it. It's really difficult language, in my opinion, for like a starter book, but it kind of gives you a general idea. I mean, there's even YouTube videos about it or like audiobooks. But if anyone has any questions, we are here. We can hang out for like the next.
As to why women don't get promoted as fast or get paid as much. All the reasons are sexist. Maybe some are sexist. I wouldn't say all.
I guess it depends on what you view as sexism, and we could go off of that definition, right?
A genetic basis is not. It's not a genetic thing on why women don't want to ask for promotions. I think it's probably more sociological. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some things, and like you can look into it's called like the only women thing. It's like it's just like the experiences when like women are underrepresented in like higher paying jobs like that. They get the promotion, right, and then they're not treated as an equal, and they're having to overcompensate for knowledge. But you do have a question on here.
Slightrightave, can you empirically prove a genetic basis on why women don't want to do those jobs / ask for promotions, or is it all sociological? So for the jobs, like I was saying, for like the I'd love more money. I do want my mom to have more money. I wish I had all the money. But why women don't want to do those jobs that I'm saying, like the very physically demanding jobs, is because it's physically taxing. And on average, men tend to be stronger than women, faster, have more upper body strength for that, and most women don't want to be a lumberjack. They just don't.
All right. For AV. There we go. I can pop them up on the screen.
So yeah, if it's sociological, then it literally is.
You can just answer the ones I post on there. You don't have to look at them. They're gonna like go for you.
Oh. As Western society as fragile and to be protected. Women are seen in almost every society to be as fragile and protected.
So when we look at the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of sexism, it's a prejudice or discrimination based on sex. So if you are not hiring someone because you think they may become pregnant, I'm pretty sure that fits the like definition of sexism.
Sexism is typically against women. That's an interesting way to word the definition. On the basis of sex. Sexism in language and offensive manner of culture. Sorry for reading it out loud.
No, you're totally fine.
Do you realize that women are looked down on when they work and have kids?
Oh,
It's
you're reading the
literally.
comments. I was like, I thought you were reading like a website or like something.
Oh no, I'm
If
I'm
there's
reading
any you
the.
want me to pop up on the screen because it kind of looks cute, like on YouTube when we have these, and you can like clip them later. I can
Yeah.
pop them too.
I think a good question was, what was it? You'd have to prove that this lower likelihood to ask is proof of genetic inherent different and not social cultural disparity, because those cultural disparity is sexism. The way women are conditioned to think is sexism. Maybe I could see it as sexism. Yeah, I guess I
I
could
mean, you
agree
gotta
with
think
that.
of like the influences that we have and like how we decide what jobs we have is heavily. It's getting better. No one's gonna say it's not getting better. However, it's still not as great as it could be, especially with like the just general like wealth inequality in the United States. I mean, wages are not going up as much as they are. What am I
Well,
thinking? Like upwards class mobility has gone down significantly. About I think it was in the 1940s. About 90% of people in their 30s out earn their parents, whereas in like today's day and age, it's only about 60%, I think, that out earn their parents. It's all going down. There's a lot of things. Oh, Avery, you got another question.
not in Spartan society. Okay, so here's the problem with this is why I don't like using ancient cultures to do things, because then you look at the other things that they did. Spartans, oh goodness. So Spartans also were killing their children if they couldn't fight. So that's why I'm not looking to the Spartans for their advice on how to run a society. Avery,
I
cats or
mean,
dogs? Dogs.
we could look at like I go back to the USSR as they made like full use of their like female labor force. They implemented a bomber team called the Night Witches, and they went and bombed Nazi Germany at night, which is pretty cool.
There was a pretty famous women female snipers too,
Yeah,
during
they
that era,
really
and they
pushed
and they had a
it.
lot of confirmed kills. Like they were competing with, like, I think that the best one was like top three out of men and women too.
Yeah, they didn't hold back like the Western societies did, where like women just weren't in war; they just went to work. Whereas the USSR was just like, let's put the women in and utilize
Let
them.
the
I mean,
women fight too.
Valentina, I can't remember her last name, was the first woman in space, which was incredible.
She was a cosmonaut, right?
Yeah, she was the first woman in space.
Top female snipers in history, and yes, Soviet sniper in the red armor during World War II. 309 confirmed kills. Lady Death.
Not everything bad came out of the USSR. I think there's a lot of propaganda, like especially that we saw on the western end of the like our hemisphere, right? That was just part of like Red Scare stuff. But I mean,
McCartneyism.
yeah, McCarthy. There's people on TikTok that are pro McCarthyism, which
I
hurts
don't
my brain.
that
Somebody named Conservative Hunter Nick videos his little brother.
Why did that? Are they related?
Yeah, they're related. That's his
They
little
are.
brother.
Oh, I
That's
was
why he
I
looks
was
like a little mini morph.
I was freaked out on how similar they look, and I didn't know if they were related or not.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke until he had his last name as his username for a while. I was like, whoa. Um,
They got the same cut too. That's
it's
interesting.
weird. It's like the Hanson from like the '90s, the
Yeah,
doo
that's
whatever that song. I can't remember.
oh,
Um, I don't know if there's any more questions. I know we'll have to like go watch the next debate. But I think I'm gonna end the stream for now since everything is kind of dwindled down. Thank you, Avery, for having this. It was more of a discourse than it was really a debate. I mean, I've had much worse instances. I'm glad that you were not an alt-right person.
sometimes I come into debates expecting a really hard, like, leftist person or someone who has really extreme views, or I see as extreme views, and then people expect the same, and then it's like, hey, I was expecting a date and you just had a conversation. I think it was very fruitful.
I think things like more conversations like this, right, are going to be
Yeah,
more like conducive for compromise, right? And that's like the goal.
yeah.
Is to find kind of somewhere in the middle. Like we're not going to completely agree on everything, but finding a way of just meeting somewhere in the middle where we can kind of like, okay, acknowledge this, move forward, instead of just being stuck.
Yeah.
Which is good. Thank you everyone for watching our stream. I'm gonna end the broadcast now, but if you want, go follow Avery on TikTok. It is his is at right here. It's slightrightave, and then I'm Hungryrye on there. Thank you again for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.